Going on YouTube, Cloverbells here back with another Scarlet Violet video, and today we're going to be talking about some news that was just dropped about an hour ago, and that is the Regulation H rule set was just announced. If you take a look on Twitter, Cerebi, they posted it. Basically, no legendary or paradox mons, hence the graphic here with Blood Moon, Ursaluna, and Dragonite. So all these restricted that we've been using for 4 months, kick them into the garage, but don't kick them too far. And what that means, we'll get into in a second. But what we're going to do is take a look at what is banned, what is legal, and what we think is going to be used quite a lot, once the format starts. But in essence, people are calling this Regulation A++. And that's really what it is, because it's basically Regulation A plus the DLC mons. All right, now you just got to subtract the legendaries and the paradox Pokemon and whatnot, right? But again, what is considered a legendary, right? That's always like a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. But to find that out, let's go ahead and go into the Cerebi website here, and let's go through some of these options that are considered banned. All right, so first of all, Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres, yes, of course, that is expected. Mewtwo, a restricted legendary, that's of course not allowed. And then you get into mythicals like Mew, okay, goodbye, that's not there. Raikou, Entei, Suicune, okay, the legendary dogs, goodbye. Lugia, Ho-Oh, Regice, the Regirocks, all the Regis are gone, okay, including Regieleki, Regidrago, by the way. Latios, Latias, okay, and then of course Kyogre, Groudon, Rayquaza, okay, basically all of these restricted legendaries, right? But it gets a little more interesting as you go down. So no Heatran, right? So that was something that was also used quite a lot, before all these legendaries was about. But now you can't even use Heatran because it is considered a legendary. All right, Giratina, Cresselia, right? Again, Cresselia also falls within that category. Can't use that guy either. Okay, the Swords of Justice, Cobalion, Terrakion, Virizion. All right, Tornadus, right? So Tornadus, a big staple on a lot of hyper-offensive teams. Now, that's not the case anymore, so you get to kick that to the curb, but you still got Whimsicott, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Thundurus, also goodbye. Landorus, same thing. So all the genies, not usable, all right, and for the next 4 months, starting in September. And again, you can see all these restricteds over here. Kyurem, Reshiram, Zekrom, and Greninja Battle Bond, of course, is not allowed. Then Solgaleo, Lunala, all right, Zacian, Zamazenta, Eternatus. Again, all the restricteds. How about this one? This is the big one. No Urshifu. Yes, both of them, Single Strike and Rapid Strike. Think about how long we've been using Urshifu, right? And, the grass was green for many people when there was no Urshifu, right? Especially if you're someone like a Tyranitar lover. Like, remember back in Sword and Shield? Back in Series 5, how, like, Tyranitar was, like, a huge offensive juggernaut. Then when they released the DLC and then they released Urshifu, and then Tyranitar ceased to exist, right? And then, of course, a little bit of Rillaboom, of course, but, Urshifu was the big boon for it. The fighting weakness and the water weakness did not help at all. And now a big part of the meta is gone. Urshifu, no more. Again, top 3 usage right now, and even in previous formats, same thing. So now, what does that mean? Who's going to be your dominant water user? You can probably already guess. I'll save it to the timestamp of the video, but you can probably guess what will come back and dominate. At least on paper, it should, in terms of the best water type to use, right? Like we said before, the Regis are banned. That means Regieleki and Regidrago. Again, Regidrago, also another, niche tool that is used on some of these hyper-offensive teams. That's gone. The Calorexes are gone. Spectre and Glastrier, okay, those are also not allowed. Screamtail, no Screamtail. And Namorous, again, falling within the Genie category. Brute Bonnet, and now we go into the Paradox Pokemon. No Fluttermane, right? Think about how long Fluttermane has dominated the VGC meta, like over a year, right? And look at this Iron Hands, right? It just came back into the meta, all right? After a couple of months of not being in it, now all of a sudden you're not going to be able to use this thing. And back when Regulation C and B was around, think about Iron Hands, right? It was top 3 usage for like a year, right? Along with Fluttermane, and now all of a sudden, you can't use that. So people are going to have to reinvent a little bit, but again, like I said, you do have DLC mons in exchange for these bans. So this is interesting, right? And then some other stuff, of course, Sandy Shock, Slitherwing, Iron Trance. These are, Paradox Pokemon that just weren't really used in VGC as of right now. Iron Jungulus, again, having that niche on those Kyogre teams, that's gone. But you know who is usable? Hydreigon. And think about how good Hydreigon was in Regulation A. That thing was an absolute monster. And you might see more or less the same idea, once the format starts. But here we go. Iron Moth, Iron Trans, Iron Thorns, Wo-Chien, right? And then Chien-Pao. Again, think about Urshifu Chien-Pao combinations, how often that was used for a while. Now, again, that arsenal is gone. And now, what happens to Dragonite, right? Chien-Pao was a good partner for Dragonite. Now, all of a sudden, you can't really take advantage of it anymore. So, will people still use Dragonite? I think so, but maybe in a different context. We'll have to wait and see. But again, no Chien-Pao. That means no boost for Urshifu, no boost for Rillaboom and Dragonite stuff. No boosting extreme speed with Sword of Ruin ideas. So that's gone. Tinglu. Also, think back to, before all the legends were released. Think how good Tinglu was with partners like Gyarados and whatnot, and Amoonguss. So Tinglu out of the picture now as well. Chi-Yu, also another strong boon in the hyper-offensive teams. That's also gone. Think about Fluttermane and Chi-Yu, how dominant those two were, for many months. Now all of a sudden, out of the picture. Roaring Moon, this was good, for a while. But again, of course, the last few months, not many were using Roaring Moon in the restricted format. But when it wasn't a restricted format, again, it was also another popular choice. Okay, Iron Valiant also seldomly used, so not missed so much. And then more restricted, Walking Wake and Iron Leaves, also not usable. Okidogi, Monkey Dory, Festivity, these guys are gone. Okay, all the Ogre Ponds, not usable at all, right? Heart Flame, Wellspring, these were, two very common options. And then the seldomly used regular Ogre Pond. And then now the more dominant and more popular Rock Ogre Pond, the Cornerstone Ogre Pond, all of a sudden is not used. But yeah, it was a brief 15 minutes of fame for Ogre Pond Cornerstone. We'll see what happens in the World Championships. But anyway, all the Ogres gone. Gouging Fire, Raging Bolt. Again, Raging Bolt, another strong meta pick right now. Top 12 usage, top 6 sometimes, right? Electro Web, Speed Control, Snarl, Damage Mitigation, Priority, Thunderclap. You don't have that arsenal anymore, so that's gone. Gouging Fire was pretty good for a while until the restricted format. That's out of the picture. And then, again, a couple more restrictions like, Terrapagos and Iron Crown, also not usable at all. So a lot of key tools for a lot of different archetypes are out of the picture now. And that means, you're going to have to use stuff that isn't legendary, okay? But, of course, we've got you covered. We're going to give you some ideas on what you can start building around once the format starts. And again, this is just like on paper, initial ideas, okay? Because people are going to be trying this stuff in the online tournaments, which, by the way, there's one as soon as Friday. We'll talk about that in a bit. But, yeah, let's go ahead and let's see what we think can be strong once the format starts. Okay, we've got a lot of potential ideas for starting cores, right? And again, it's all about thinking back to what was the case in Regulation A and just making a couple of tweaks based on, the DLC mods available to you right now. Because sometimes there's better options now. For example, back in Regulation A, a lot of people were just using Arcanine, which they considered like budget Incineroar. But now you actually have Incineroar to use. So some people might just simply, swap out their Arcanines and just put it in Incineroar. And it might work, okay? That's already the first idea. Then, now you still have Rillaboom, okay? Back in Regulation A, you didn't have Rillaboom. Now you have it again. So now you can still have the Fake Out Boys in your Fire Water Grass Core. You don't have Urshifu for your Water type, but guess who comes back? And guess who people are going to try and already use now? That's going to be Palafin. Imagine Incin with the pivot move, with Parting Shot, okay? And then you have, from 0 to hero Palafin ability, right? So you can hard switch your Palafin turn 1, and then Parting Shot with the Incineroar, and then bring back the Palafin in the same turn, and then it becomes the hero form all in one turn, right? People are going to be doing this. And then imagine, Rillaboom at the same time. Again, also the same move, with U-turn, pivot potential here. Again, these guys are going to be coming in and out, and then Palafin's going to be coming in, okay? And now you have the Mystic Water item, and then, of course, you're going to be doing a ton of damage. And these are not legendaries anymore, right? They don't have, like, base 150 bulk, okay? So, Jet Punches and wave crashes, they're gonna hurt a lot. So you can definitely start off right now with these guys. And if you don't want Rillaboom, you know, if you want like somewhat of a better Trick Room matchup, now you can also do Amoonguss. So you can still do Instant Amoonguss for your defensive backbone. That's never going to change. And then you have Palafin instead of the Urshifu as your aggressive water type. And this will also serve you just fine. People are definitely going to be doing this right from the get-go because, again, Palafin was a very common, strong Pokemon in the Regulation A format. Okay, so look out for this. This is going to be one of the first combos, you know, with Rillaboom in place of Amoonguss for sure. Now, we did mention that Tornadus was a key part on those Tailwind hyper offensive teams, but now that Tornadus is not there anymore, who can take its place? Well, you can already consider Whimsicott, right? Of course, it's another prankster Pokemon with Tailwind, okay? And the main difference here is that Whimsicott does not get Rain Dance, okay? But it does get Sunny Day, so you'll probably see a little bit more Sun teams now, as opposed to before, maybe. Okay, let me take off Tornadus, but you know who else gets to come back out and play that also has Prankster? Remember this little guy? Remember Murkrow? Okay, yeah, it's been a hot minute, 2 years about, until we saw Murkrow, you know, come back in a competitive format. But now it will be yet again, because again, Murkrow does get Rain Dance, it does get Foul Play, okay, and it also got Quash too, right? So you get to have this alongside this, right? And then at the same time, you did also have Tailwind, so you can also consider some of this stuff. So, you know, Murkrow has a couple of moves that it can go for, you know, even Icy Wind here. And then they have Violet. You know, lots of different moves you can put on Murkrow, but I do expect these two Prankster Pokemon to be used on a lot of different teams, you know, as far as like the hyper offensive goes. And I want to go back here and discuss a little bit about Murkrow, because I want to remind people of another familiar core that dominated Regulation A. Remember this core? Okay, let's talk. We mentioned Hydreigon, right? Remember this? Hydreigon? Remember the double dragon core with Garchomp as well? Oh man, it's been a hot minute since we've seen Garchomp, but it's gonna come back yet again. And who was the steel type that people played? Remember this? Remember Gholdengo? Yeah, it's been, you know, nowadays people using, you know, Terra Normal Gholdengo for the niche Calyrex Shadow Rider matchup, but now you don't have to do that. Okay, you can choose another Terra. There's no more Calyrex anymore, so you might even just go back to your Terra Fairy business, you know, in front of the Dark types. But remember this Core 4? Yeah, like, you definitely will expect to see that yet again. You know, no surprises, you know, and probably just add, you know, 2 filler slots here. But this core was a huge part of the Regulation A meta, you know, for a good amount of time. And I expect that to come back yet again. People are definitely going to try it for sure. So watch out for this 4. Oh, man. And you already know what that means. Next up, let's talk about this duo, Dondozo Tatsugiri. Remember, it's been another hot minute since we've seen these two active within the meta. Although they did have an important placement in the Regulation G tournaments as of late. We'll talk about that in another video. But remember back when there were no legends, there were no restricteds. Okay, remember how much Dondozo and Tatsugiri were rampant throughout the meta. Now they're gonna come back yet again. So remember all your techs and all your tools that you needed to use against Dondozo. You're gonna have to remember what they were, okay, because it's coming back. So think about that, right? Unaware is a great ability. Then you had stuff like, you know, Order Up, you know, to boost it up. Then you had Wave Crash, Earthquake, stuff like this, Protect. And then Tatsugiri, sometimes it just simply ran like a Choice Scarf just to outspeed things. And then, you know, just pretty standard Muddy Water, Draco Meteor. And then sometimes it even ran Soak, right? Because then what you could do is Soak and then, you know, put in position something else that could take advantage of the water weakness. Remember this Pokemon, Meowscarada, right? You know, again, pretend Urshifu, I like to say, right? You know, Flower Trick critting everything, okay? And now you add Tatsugiri clicking Soak. Remember this? This was also a thing for a bit. So expect to see some variations of Dondozo Tatsugiri, right? And you have the clear amulet item, you know, so this way you can't really necessarily intimidate it unless they don't have it. But at the same time, you know, just be ready for these two. People are going to be playing it immediately, right from the get-go, for sure. Oh man, remember these two? Remember Meowscarada? Oh my goodness, it's been a long time since I've seen these two back together again. But again, people are gonna use them, okay? Especially when you have Incineroar now. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Listen, Meowscarada. Okay, remember the set, right? It was Follow Me. Okay, then you had Population Bomb with the wide lens, so you wouldn't miss. Okay, and then at the same time, you know, Meowscarada. Depending on their set, they could have been like Choice Scarf, of course, with the Final Gambit. And it was usually something like this: Final Gambit, Close Combat, okay, Shadow Claw, and then some other filler move that I can't remember off the top of my head. You could run these two, okay, or sometimes you had this, the Leftovers, Drain Punch, Bulk Up stuff. So you know, let me just put that there: Drain Punch, Bulk Up. Okay, and that was Shadow Ball, but of course, you know, I meant like some Shadow Claw, right? And then here's your Protect slot, right? Terra Fire was also pretty good, right? You had this, okay, and then, you know, your last floor, here, just slap on that floor. Here we go. Remember what I just showed you? Garchomp, okay, Hydreigon, your double Dragon Core, right? Because you can Earthquake next Hydreigon. It has Levitate, Gholdengo, okay, and then you have Murkrow here. Okay, congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. Here's your first Regulation A+ team, okay? All right, if you really want me to, like, create this EV spread, you know, feel free to DM me. I could send you this. But, yeah, like, this is going to be, like, one of those first starter teams. So, Meowscarada, and then have a core 4, okay? People are going to use this. And this was a Regulation A dominant team, okay? And people are going to try stuff like this. But, again, you know, Meowscarada, again, be ready for them. They're coming back. Speaking of Defiant users like Annihilape, here's another Pokemon that will definitely come back immediately. How about Kingambit? Remember Kingambit, how much this thing was used? It's seldomly used right now, but because we're in a restricted format. But this thing was an absolute menace, you know, back in the non-restricted, and even in the pre-restricted format, it was still like really, really good. You know, the dark typing, the Defiant ability, the priority sucker punches, right? It was so strong. And then you had the option for Swords Dance if you really wanted to. But again, Kingambit, another one of those Pokemon, you know, now that Incineroar is also going to be used throughout, it's just another good option to use, right? And then you had Ironhead for the fairies that you could potentially knock out, and just something like Protect. You could do something like this, very standard Black Glasses set. You could also do like an Assault Vest set. But either way, I think Kingambit will also be very, very strong. Just because look at the stats. Look, base 100 HP, 135 attack, 120 defense. Really, really strong. Very good in Trick Room. Okay. I like this a lot. I do expect it to be on some rather physical heavy teams. Like remember Garchomp and something like Grimmsnarl, right? This was also like another pretty cool core like Dragon Fairy Steel. But yeah, I'm excited to use Garchomp again, man. It's been a hot minute since I've been able to use Garchomp. It's one of my favorites. And then even Grimmsnarl, right? We mentioned Whimsicott and Murkrow, the prankster tailwind users, but how about Grimmsnarl, also another prankster user with screens? And you know, Grimmsnarl screens was also a thing back in Regulation 8, and I think it's going to be even more of a thing now. You've got Fluttermane out of the picture, okay, so it's not weak to that anymore. So you know, and we already took out Tornadus, so I do think we're going to have some old classic battles of Whimsicott versus Grimmsnarl, and I'm all for it, right? And I do like this team, by the way. I think now you just round it out with some Firewater Grass Core stuff. You could just do something like this with Incineroar. You could do stuff like even a Mungus, and then here's your Palafin, right? And then that's it. Here's another Regulation A+ team, more or less. But you know, you can even consider something like this, and it's pretty balanced, right? Dragon Fairy Steel, Firewater Grass Core. This is something else that you can even consider. But either way, the point is Kingambit, it's locked and loaded, and it's going to come right back into the meta, so I'm excited for that as well. We have to talk about Blood Moon Ursaluna, right? I think this is going to be one of the strongest options that people are going to be using in Regulation H, aka Regulation A+. This thing is not banned, folks, okay? Think about the power levels that this is going to do, right? And again, you're going to be able to hit the ghost type, so that's great too. So now just imagine the Indeedee teams, right? So you can easily do like Indeedee, Hatterene, and then you can even just go into your Torkoal here, right? And this is already like going to be a lot of Trick Room cores early on. So be aware of that. You might even have the physical Ursaluna in this sense, right? So you can even use that too. But either way, Trick Rooms are going to be good. Yet again, like not in the sense that they weren't good before, but Hatterene has expanding force now. Whereas back then, it did not have it yet. And now that it has it, that changes a lot. Okay, and now you have Blood Moon Ursaluna to use with it. So, you know, that's going to be another welcome sight that people are going to be considering. Also, you know who else is coming back that also could match well into some Ursaluna teams, or even with Ursaluna? Okay, first of all, let me just put the regular one first. Do you guys remember Gyarados? Yeah, remember Regulation 8? Gyarados was another solid Intimidator, along with regular Arcanine, of course. Now that we have Incineroar, we don't have any use for Arcanine per se, but remember Gyarados was a Pokemon that was also used as an Intimidator, right? You had the standard Waterfall set, then you had Thunder Wave, okay, and then you had the Rocky Helmet over here, and, you know, Gyarados, again, you know, base 125 attack is still like a very solid Pokemon to have, and, you know, nice also to pair with regular Ursaluna, so that could be interesting in itself, right? Of course, you're probably also going to want to pair Gyarados along with something like Garchomp too, because this is also your classic Earthquake duo with Gyarados at the same time. But either way, you know, Gyarados, another Pokemon that, you know, could accompany Incineroar as far as like a top Intimidator on your team. But again, you know, you have to justify using the Gyarados over something like a Palafin, because Palafin's also going to be very, very strong. But so will Gyarados. I do think Gyarados will find its way in the format, as will, of course, both Ursalunas without a doubt. Oh man, one of my own personal favorites as well, Tyranitar, folks. Remember back in Sword and Shield, how, like, think back to Series 5 if you even played in that game. But remember when Tyranitar was also a force back then, and then they released the DLC, then Urshifu came out, and then you never saw Tyranitar ever again, okay, more or less. But now that Urshifu is gone, guess who gets to come back and play? Tyranitar. And back in Regulation 8, Tyranitar was a very, very strong force. Okay, and now I expect it to be more or less the same. And now he gets a cool friend. He gets Excadrill now. Okay, whereas back in Regulation 8, he did not get that. So imagine this core with like Tyranitar, Excadrill, Amoonguss, and maybe something like that Gyarados we talked about. Okay, now you've got Intimidate, you got Redirection, you can add a Fake Out user, you can even put Incineroar here if you want. But I do expect something like this to be a thing. Sand might actually make a decent comeback here, because Tyranitar, Excadrill, who's going to beat this? Well, actually, there's lots of ways to beat it, right? But I do think this is actually playable now. Okay, so people are going to try it, but, you know, even without Excadrill, Tyranitar still was pretty good at what it was doing. Like, again, look at the stats, right? Base 134 attack, 110 defense, 100 SPDF with a boost in that department because of the sand. And then, of course, the HP, a good solid 100. And again, you know, you got knockoff now, right, on your T-Tar. So that's really good. And then you've got Rock Slide spam for days for both of these mons. So you get to get 17 flinches. And then the opponent just, you know, gets angry at you. But I do expect Sand to have some sort of impact to a degree. Like, you might even have something like Rotom. Oh, remember like how Rotoms were played, like both Rotom Wash and even Rotom Heat? I remember this, okay? And then you might even have something like Garchomp here, right? Maybe one of the Rotoms and then have a Garchomp here. But something like this could also be a play here. Yeah, again, I'm just excited to use Garchomp again, right? Along with Grimmsnarl stuff. But, you know, I do think T-Tar, Excadrill will be used. And, you know, it just all depends on the pieces around it. Okay, we're not going to go through like every single team building idea, but I do want to note like some other Pokemon that I think are also going to have impact within the early stages of the Regulation H meta, without a doubt. So I think Sylveon now becomes a pretty dominant fairy, because again, who was the competitor for Sylveon? It was always Fluttermane, right? There was pros and cons to both, but in the end, Fluttermane was just too good. So much special attack. You get a boost to it. It was also really fast. Sylveon more or less better in like a Trick Room kind of team. And Sylveon was pretty good in Regulation 8. Like, remember the Talonflame, Sylveon, Tyranitar team? So you might even see that again. Speaking of Talonflame, again, another Pokemon here, you know, with Gale Wings and Tailwind. Another Pokemon that will also see some good play on some of those hyper offensive teams. Like, remember Garchomp, Talonflame teams? So I think that also comes back again. Baxcalibur also great into the dragons that are coming back. So think about Garchomp, think about Gholdengo, think about Dragonite too. But I do think Baxcalibur, especially with the clear amulet set, is set to make another big impact yet again in the format. Hariyama, there's no more Iron Hands, so your Guts user, okay, is going to be this thing. And you know, it's still pretty good, like base 120 attack. Again, it was used back then as well, so I do expect this to also have some sort of play. Skeledirge also, you know, unaware, great ability, was pretty good in Dondozo games. So something like this could be also really, really solid. And like we mentioned, Dragonite, also very, very good. It's still strong even without Chien-Pao. You can still put the band on this. You can still go extreme speed. You know, nothing wrong about that. Chien-Pao just made Dragonite like super, super busted. But without it, it's still okay. Like, you do need the band E-Speed, Terra Normal stuff, and you can still one-shot a lot of different things. So just be aware of that. So I think something like this, these 6 will also have some play. And also another one that can also see some play that, you know, I haven't quite forgotten, Corviknight, right? Remember Corviknight? Again, another Pokemon, right? Does get Tailwind, bulky Tailwind setter. You know, Garchomp, Corviknight, Grimmsnarl cores are also going to be solid. But again, Corviknight, another Pokemon that can also do relatively well, you know, considering what Regulation A had. And now you just add some DLC mods. But again, DLC mods are going to make a huge impact on a lot of those teams that were good in Regulation A. I'm sure there are going to be some adaptations and some adjustments. But at the very least, we have something to go off of. Whereas back then, when Scarlet and Violet first came out, we didn't really know what to expect. Everybody was trying everything. But now we have a database. We know what worked in the past. Now it's all about, you know, adapting those teams with the DLC mods. And it's going to be a very exciting and very fresh meta for many people, right? And I'm excited too. All right, so that's going to be it for now, folks. Well, let me know what you think of the Regulation H announcement. Let me know what you're excited to see and what kind of teams and cores that you're going to be using, because we're going to do a lot of team building for it, all right, leading into the next upcoming month. And if it's something you're interested in, right? I always advertise this, right? If it's something you're interested in and you need help building your Regulation H teams, feel free to sign up for coaching on the channel, right? If you look in the video description or in the comment section, there's a pinned link where you can click on that link and you can join the channel with the tier 3 sub. It's only $9.99. And then from there, you get to have a Discord call with me. We get to build a team from scratch, you know, hashing out all the EVs and whatnot based on what you want, the way you want it, for whatever needs you need it for. It could be for ladder, it could be for tournament play, you know, for a regional, anything to earn CP, you know, whatever it is you need it for, we will help you construct that team based on what is going to be relevant in the meta at that given time. All right, but again, feel free to check out, and from there, you know, we'll be back with another video in the next one. Peace out and have a good one.